Merci, Madame la Présidente. Chers collègues, je me lève aujourd'hui en Chambre pour parler du projet de loi C-59, la loi d'exécution de l'énoncé économique de l'automne 2023. Je concentrerai mes remarques sur l'article 236 qui modifie la loi sur la concurrence et de l'importance de ces changements. More and more, we are seeing environmental legislation added to budget bills, and C-59 is not an exception. This is because climate and nature-related risks are associated with significant costs to Canadians. Addressing issues of environmental pollution and global warming, while the transition to a low-carbon economy requires a whole government approach, one that uses environmental levers as part of an horizontal approach to policy development and legislation. Indeed, given the climate and overlapping cascading crisis, and that Canada is not progressing neither with greenhouse gas emissions reduction nor with reduction of pollution, the federal government must do more to protect Canadians. Since 1990, after the implementation of more than 10 climate change mitigation plans, Canada has yet to reach its climate targets or succeed in achieving its emissions reduction targets. The United Nations notes and is clear that greenwashing undermines credible efforts to reduce emissions and address the climate crisis. Through deceptive marketing and false claim of sustainability, greenwashing misleads not only consumers, but also responsible investors, hampering the trust, the ambition, the action needed to bring about global change and secure a sustainable planet. Division 6 of C-59 contains measures to modernize Canada's competition framework by proposing amendments to the Competition Act. The provision as amended was adopted unanimously in the other place. I encourage you colleagues to vote for C-59 as amended by the elected chamber and accept the report with the observation of the National Finances Committee. The Competition Bureau has long had the ability to enforce against greenwashing, false or misleading representation of the benefits of a product towards the environment that are not based on proper and adequate testing. However, the existing provisions could capture only few greenwashing claims, but most importantly, did not require firms to have evidence to back some of their environmental claims. This has limited the power of the Competition Bureau to effectively enforce against greenwashing. In Canada, greenwashing, unfortunately, is a systemic issue. Just last week, at the House of Commons Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development, it was made clear that Canadian banks, while claiming to be on the path to net zero, are investing more in fossil fuels compared to renewables. They favor fossil fuel investment over clean energy at a ratio of almost 4-to-1, even though this investment ratio should be exactly the opposite. And this investment should be effective before 2030 if we hope to achieve a 1.5 scenario. The same committee, at the other place, met also with PAD Alliance, a coalition of 6 companies representing 95% of oil sands production in Canada. This group advertised their net zero 2050 goals and lobbied the government to approve and subsidize a carbon capture and sequestration project. This, they claim, will help them achieve net zero emissions despite several scientists raising concerns about the scientific validity of this technology. Indeed, according to a joint report of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee and House Oversight released just last April, oil companies' massive public-facing campaigns portray carbon capture and storage as a viable and available solution to allow them to continue increasing their greenhouse gas emissions, while they internally acknowledge that they are not planning to deploy the technology at the scale needed to solve the climate crisis. The U.S. report also finds that the industry's true goal is to prolong, perhaps indefinitely, the unabated use of fossil fuels. Based on these facts, Are we surprised that one of our 5 big banks and Path Alliance are the subject of investigation by the Competition Bureau? Or that Path Alliance lobbied to amend this article of C-59? Greenwashing can give a company an unfair advantage, allowing them to continue business as usual polluting practices, while benefiting from deceptive claims about environmental stewardship. This can make it more difficult for responsible business corporations who are not greenwashing and who are, in fact, doing the hard work required to stand out in the marketplace. Over time, greenwashing has eroded consumer faith, which makes consumers more likely to dismiss environmental claims, even those that are, in fact, legitimate. A 2023 report revealed that 57% of Canadian consumers do not believe most green claims brands make. Thus, companies are likely to gain an advantage by closing the perception gap and validating their sustainability and environmental claims. Even more concerning is that companies producing greenwash products or running greenwash businesses and facilities also have a history of locating these pollutant businesses in equity-deserving communities, including low-income and racialized communities, and of course, indigenous people lands. Greenwashing not only puts the environment at risk, but also public health. Notably, this is why we needed a framework for the prevention of environmental racism. The amendments to the Competition Act in Bill C-59 will make it easier for consumers to identify genuine green products as well as businesses with sustainable practices. A 2021 survey found that 49% of Canadian consumers agree they made purchases from companies that supported environmental protection, and 46% of survey respondents agree they purchased more biodegradable and eco-friendly products. Colleagues, there is a strong demand and a strong growing market for green products, and we know that consumers can drive the market. But up to now, this ability in the context of the green market has been hindered by greenwashing. On May 31st this year, in a letter to the chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Banking, Commerce and Economy, sent on behalf of the Competition Bureau, it was stated, and I quote, "As a general principle, when companies make claims to promote a product or business interest, they should be able to back them up. Bogus claims are false or misleading and undermine competitions on the merits. In the context of greenwashing, the harm of unfounded claims is even more pernicious, given the existential threat posed by climate change and the need to accelerate a green transition." The letter goes to say that, and I quote, "A substantiation requirement protects competition by ensuring that consumers can trust the statements that are made about businesses and businesses' activities. It safeguards honest and reputable manufacturers and merchants who compete with those making claims about the environmental impacts of production. Increasingly, consumers make purchasing decisions based on the environmental impacts of production, and as such, the harm from unsubstantiated claims in relation to businesses and businesses' activities is just as serious harm to competition as the harm in respect of unsubstantiated claims in respect of individual products. These amendments will strengthen our ability to police deceptive greenwashing claims." End quote. I'm aware that concerns were raised by few stakeholders and some colleagues at committee about what qualifies as an internationally recognized methodology in the context of adequate and proper substantiation with respect to the benefits of a business or business activities as they relate to environmental claims. However, I am confident that while this term is not defined in the bill, that Canadians and Canadian businesses can place their trust in the Competition Bureau, the Commissioner of Competition, and the Competition Tribunal. As noted at committee, the Competition Bureau has a distinguished and unsullied reputation. They have a history of professionalism, demonstrated understanding of legislation, awareness of what is happening in Canada, and ability to monitor what goes on in the United States and elsewhere in the world. With regard to international recognized methodology, I will also note that there are such methodologies for most environmental claims, including, and I list, the Science-Based Target Initiative, which is commonly used for net zero targets, the International Sustainability Standard Board, which is commonly used for climate-related disclosures, and the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, which is commonly used for nature-related disclosure, to only name a few. I'm told that if you make the research, there is going to be 15 other standards, including all the family of the ISO standards. Furthermore, this type of substantiation requirement is not unique to Canada. California has a requirement that is almost identical, and the European Union and the United Kingdom are developing rules and guidance that are intended to regulate and require evidence of certain environmental claims, including those related to carbon neutrality and climate friendliness. Finally, I would like to highlight that the amendments of the Competition Act proposed in Clause 236(1) are not an attack on free speech, nor do they intend to foster greenwashing or eco-silence. While these amendments may lead organizations to be more careful when making green claims, this should be viewed as a positive consequence. The bottom line is that an organization should not make any claim, green or otherwise, that it cannot substantiate with sound evidence. While there remains opportunity to further strengthen the Competition Act and greenwashing regulation in general, I recommend that this is left for future consideration, including giving more power to the Commissioner as he has expressed. As the intensity of environmental and social crises increases, we must take a horizontal approach to budget bills and must consider all aspects of the Canadian budgetary cycle through a climate lens. Je soutiens cette approche législative visant à combler horizontalement les lacunes qui rendent notre environnement, notre économie et notre société vulnérables. C'est pour les raisons que je viens d'exposer que je soutiens le projet de loi C-59 et que je vous demande de voter en sa faveur. Merci, thank you, Mewich.